Well, we moved halfway into a drug model in the 2000s. So in the United States and Canada, both governments were forced to look at how should we regulate natural products because consumers were rebelling. Is we have drug regulations that were never intended to apply to natural products. So our drug regulations are for novel chemicals that have never been put in the human body before, and we've learned that's a really risky thing to do, and we need strict regulations. When we brought them in, nobody ever thought that, we've been using ginger tea for 2,000 years to treat nausea and pregnancy, that all of a sudden we'd have to get licensed or there'd be any change. But for things like thalidomide, well, yes, you want to go through this rigorous process. So they were left alone forever, which in itself was proof that the drug regulations were never intended for them. But then when they became popular, I think it's when they started actually threatening profits. Both in the United States and Canada, the regulatory body started going after these products, saying you have to comply with these chemical drug regulations that were never intended for your type of products. Now, it's interesting, Tanya, is both countries did the opposite thing. So Congress holds intensive hearings. They say these are so safe, like let's not pretend there's a danger. They
Hmm.
passed a law classifying them as foods and deeming by law that they're safe. And in the United States, you don't need any pre-approval to use a natural product for a therapeutic purpose, much like before. So basically, they're citizen rebellion, yes, the status quo, plus they're deemed safe, plus they're in the food category. Well, in Canada, we put them in the drug category.
Oh,
They're deemed
wow.
by law to be unsafe, and we need government permission to sell them for a therapeutic purpose, right down to ginger tea for nausea. So after 2,000 years, all of a sudden now we need the government to tell us that that's okay. And so the difference is the prices have increased since the mid 2000s by a factor of 3 or 4.
Are natural products harmful?
So, and it's a really good question, and I hope your audience will listen to what I say is whenever government tells you that you need to be protected from something, you have to ask yourself, well, they're telling me there's a risk. How does it compare with other risks? So, Tanya, I had done an access to information request probably about 12 years ago, asking Health Canada. Since 1965, we've had a robust adverse reaction reporting system. Point out to me a single credible report of death caused by a natural health product, and they couldn't. And we all hear, oh, there's this or this or this, but the reality is you're 14 times more likely to be struck by lightning than to be harmed by a natural health product. And
Wow.
peanut butter is so much more dangerous than all of the natural health products, the 70 or 80,000, however there are on the market. Peanut butter is dramatically more dangerous. Any risk analysis person will tell you that outright because you have to search hard for a credible report of a death caused by a natural health product. But every month in Canada, a number of Canadians die from peanut butter each year. We could use Tylenol as an example. That single over the counter drug causes about 40 deaths a year taken as directed. But what we used to do, so Tanya, how it used to work is a product would come on the market, a multi-ingredient product. So let's say Strauss Heart Drops, for example. That's a product I had a court case where I was calling witnesses who basically were only alive because of that product. Or True Hope absolutely. It was quite staggering if we had time to tell the story. Or True Hope EM Power Plus, where I was calling witnesses who said I was going to commit suicide if I ran out, and I called the president of the Alberta branch of the Mental Health Association, who held a press conference every time one of their members died. And the court found it was legally necessary for True Hope to continue selling in the oral decision, or there'd be more deaths. We're literally talking for many people life and death, and the innovation, things like True Hope Emperor Plus or Strauss Heart Drops, has stopped. And what Health Canada doesn't do is they don't take into account, well, we say we need to overregulate to protect you. Well, what's the danger of removing products from the market? Because the reason why they're popular with Canadians are they work. Tanya, if you were taking something and it wasn't helping you, you wouldn't buy it again. It's that
Right.
simple. But when Health Canada is saying we need stricter regulation to protect you from something that is safer than peanut butter. And yet they don't take into account the fact that, well, we're driving prices up so fewer Canadians can now access it. Every time you regulate something more strictly, you lose manufacturers, you lose distributors, you lose products.
Right.
And so what's the health consequence of that? If you want to tell us something's for our health, then you do a balanced risk analysis. That's when you know the government's just fleecing you, is when the risk analysis isn't balanced. The same treatment protocol for Canadians is now 3 or 4 times the price than for Americans, and it's because of our regulation.
Wow.
So Health Canada is wanting to harmonize completely the regulation with over-the-counter chemical drugs and natural health products. And so what they're doing is they're actually reducing the regulatory burden for the chemical drugs, which is interesting. And then natural health products are going to have to match that regulatory burden. So when you have increased regulatory burden, then you have increased prices. Health Canada is also going to be imposing on the natural product industry the same fees they charge the chemical pharmaceutical drugs. They've already gazetted it in Gazette 1, their proposal. And their goal is eventually full harmonization. So likely they'll come in and say, well, we'll just charge you 1/8 right now and then slowly bump it up. But the reality is that when you're imposing new licensing fees on a competitive industry, prices have to go up. You forgot to mention we don't pay GST on chemical pharmaceutical drugs, but the federal government charges us GST on natural products. So it's somewhat a little interesting. And so Health Canada takes the position that you cannot share truthful health information. And I stress truthful. We're not talking about fraud. We're talking about truthful health information about products. So Health Canada takes the position that you can only advertise what their approved label claim is. So let's say I'd mentioned True Hope Empower Plus earlier, which is likely the most effective treatment for serious bipolar disorder in the world. And a number of psychiatrists and the like would agree with me on that. But True Hope can't tell you about that. And in fact, I think there's 35 peer-reviewed published journal publications funded by governments around the world. So this isn't the company, this is governments, including Canadian governments, sponsoring research and then having that research published into a product. Health Canada says it's illegal for True Hope to share that truthful government-funded information with you. Well, before the budget bill, they had links to all of those journal publications on their website so that people could access truthful health information.
And make
well,
up
now
their
that there's $5 million a day fines, those links are gone. If Canadians don't step up in the next 1.5 to 2 years, we're going to find ourselves where basically our only option are chemical pharmaceutical drugs. So we'll have multivites in small, amounts with label directions that are meaningless. But those really vibrant multi-ingredient products that work for us, they will be gone. And we'll lose most of our healthcare practitioners that rely on the products because Health Canada is no longer going to license professional products.